Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Welcome, whoever's watching live and those who are going to be listening later. Today's session is going to be about how to write your birth plan. This is going to be tips for pregnant mother who want to give birth confidently. And don't we all want to give birth confidently? Inshallah, in today's session, we're going to touch upon an introduction to what is a birth plan. Then we're going to look at the different sections that we need to include in our birth plan. And I'm going to use my own birth plan as an example. So I'm going to take you through how I created the birth plan document. So birth plan is just a single page. So how I created it, what are the different sections that I included, what was the research I did before I included each of the section, and how did I figure out what I want in my birth plan. So, in a single sentence, the essence of what a birth plan is, it's basically a paper, a document that captures the dream or the vision or the goal that you have for that day when you're giving birth. So, as pregnant moms, I think if you've attended our session so far, you already know this group or this community, it's all about having an empowered birth experience, an empowered positive birth experience. So already that means that you have an idea that when you go to the hospital, you're not going to go to the hospital like as if you're going to take a car to a mechanic. You're not taking your body to the hospital and just giving it over to them and saying, hey, do whatever you want. No. So this community is all about informing ourselves about our physiology, what's going to happen during labor. So we already know about the different stages of labor. We know what to expect, and we know what we want on that day when our labor and birth begins. We already practice how we're going to go through labor so that on that day when labor arrives, we are confident, we're not afraid, we are completely at calm and at peace. And when we, inshallah, alhamdulillah, have our baby in our arms, we are so excited and so happy, and we know exactly what to do and how to hold him or her close to us and start feeding. So the whole idea is that we need to have a dream or vision or a goal for the day we give birth. And this birth plan is essentially a single page document that shows that on paper. Now you can ask why we need that on paper. The reason we need that on paper is because this is how we communicate those ideas to those around us. This can be as simple as our husband or our sister or our mother-in-law, whoever's going to be coming to us in the labor room. If we don't want any of them, it's just us. This document is also for our doctors, midwives, nurses, whoever's going to be there in the hospital setting. Essentially, why we say it should be only one single page is because in many hospitals there is a folder that's pasted like outside or on inside on the door of your labor room. So this I mean, I think it's very common now, birth plans. So most hospitals are already up with the idea and they know what a birth plan is. So you'll take this single page document and it'll be pasted on the door somewhere. So whoever is coming on shift, whether that's a nurse or a OB or a midwife, they know who this mom is who is laboring now, who are her support people, and what are the wishes she has for labor. Giving birth is a huge experience. It's one of the most intense experiences that we can have, even not even as women, as human beings. So during that time, we need our headspace, our mental, emotional space to be completely free of distractions so we are able to go inwards and focus on our labor. This is not a time for people to keep on coming and asking questions like, do you want this, do you want that, would you like this, would you no, right? Stop talking to me. I don't want to be thinking about all of this. So a birth plan is a quick fix for that. So we're going to write down everything so all the answers are there, and whoever has any questions, they can just refer to your birth plan and it's all there. Right? Do you want to eat during labor? Do you want to be massaged during labor? Do you want to have somebody set up a pool, the water tub for you, so because you want to labor in the water, whatever your preferences are, we're going to write it down in there so you'll be left alone, and you're able to completely focus on that experience of going through labor. So that's the purpose of what a birth plan is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my birth plan, and we're just going to jump straight into it, inshallah. So this, what you see right now, it's my actual birth plan that I actually took to my actual labor with my son. I have a couple of birth plans here. So the first one here, this is mine. So the idea is that there are different kinds of birth plan. There are different ways that you can write it. See, this is a Malayalam one that I did for one of my friends. And visual birth plans is also something that I do. A birth plan, right? It's not exactly, let's say, set in stone, right? It's more of a birth preference, which is why here on top you will see that instead of writing birth plan, I've called it birth preferences. Now, the reason why I did, obviously, I'm not the one who did it myself. As you may already know, for both my births, I had the guidance for my son. I had the guidance of a childbirth educator, and for my daughter, with my second birth, I had the guidance of a doula herself. So this was an advice that they gave me. Instead of writing birth plan, you can write birth preferences, because this essentially is what you prefer to happen, and not, this is the only way. That's not it. That's not how it is. This is what you prefer to happen during labor, and this is not in any way you forcing the hospital, or forcing yourself even, or forcing your husband or anyone to do something that at that moment of time or during labor, it doesn't make sense, which is why on top, yeah, right, we always mention that I would like this birth to be active, natural. So this is if you're following the Amani birth principles. But you mentioned in the introduction that this is what you prefer to happen. But if for any case, for the safety of yourself or for your baby, that you're not able to, let's say, go through any of the points that I mentioned, you are also open to that. So if you see on the side, you can see that we put the condition or the statement that informed consent. So what is the meaning of that? That means that if for any reason something that's over here, it needs to be changed. For example, I've mentioned here that I want to have natural pain relief, but for some reason, or I don't want to be monitored. For some reason, if there is a need to do that, the box here that we mentioned that says, I would like to have informed consent, that means before they do anything, they will inform me and my husband, or whoever's there with me. They will inform me of the risks and the advantages and the reason why that's being done, and give us some time to make our decision. Usually, typically what happens is, people just, they just go on with it. It's like a routine. It just keeps happening one after the other. Someone comes in, they inject you with something, they give you an IV, they give you a monitor, they say sit down, lie down, stand up. It just goes on as a routine. But now with the birth plan, and by insisting that you want to have informed consent, you make sure that in a labor room, you are the star, right? It's your show. It's you are the center of that, the story, in a way. So whatever happens will happen only with your consent. If at all during labor they need to ask you something or anything, you make sure that your husband or whoever is going to be coming into labor with you also knows what's on this document. So they also know what your birth plan is. And when we say birth plan, we mean what are your wishes for the day you give birth, right? So those who are coming with you are also on board with this. So if you're having an induction, or even if you're having like any other kind of, an epidural or anything, right? Whatever you would choose to do, your partner or whoever's coming into labor with you also knows that this is what you prefer. And whenever there is a question that's being asked, it's both of you who are making the decision. So it's not all on you. On that day in the labor room, when you're faced with all of these all of the different questions and papers that needs to be signed, and the nurses want to ask something, the doctor wants to ask something, they need to check on you, and all of this, it really really makes you feel so much more relieved when they have a birth plan to refer to. And then when they ask a question, your husband or your sister or your mother, they're able to just hand them this paper and say everything that she prefers and she wants is there on this paper. You can refer to it. And if there's any other question, you can ask me, which is your support person. And really, if there's no choice at all, then only then you will be, I wouldn't like to call it this, but disturbed in a way. It's not a disturbance, but that's how it is. Your flow during labor should not be interrupted, and in any way, because you're trying to be this. I'm just saying from my experience, right? We're trying to be in our as natural of a state as possible. So that's like even mental, emotional. That's the important part, right? When we're moving from our natural or instinctive or emotional state, when someone asks us a question, we quickly switch back into our thinking brain, right? Because we're trying to think of the best answer to that question. So, of course, that affects the flow of the labor, the flow of hormones. And of course, it's a science that's behind it. I'm only speaking from my own experience. However, that's why we need a birth plan, no matter what kind or type of birth you're going to have. Even if you're going to have a cesarean, even if you're going to have a scheduled cesarean for any reason, there can be health reasons or genuine risks for which it's better for you to have a cesarean. If you choose to do that, you can still have a gentle cesarean birth plan, right? And a gentle cesarean birth plan, in a gentle cesarean birth plan, you would write things like, I would like to see my baby being born because that really releases a lot of hormones. I would like to hold my baby to my chest, and while you complete the cesarean surgery. So in that case, instead of taking your baby away after the cesarean, they would actually put the baby on your chest, and you're able to start breastfeeding while the doctors finish the rest of the procedure. So all of these. So for all kinds of birth, having a birth plan really helps you figure out what you want for that day and practice for that. And more than that, it also helps your hospital team understand what your wishes are and respect that, so that on that day it's not like it's like going for a school play and nobody knows what the script is. Now we're going to go into actually sitting down and writing what your birth plan is. See, there are many ways to do it, right? So the first would be, you can just write it down in a piece of paper, right? Or you can just type it up as a document. Or there are many templates that are available online. These such icons, you can find them, you can just make them, and get them like that. So in my experience, I would prefer to keep it as a visual. So even if you don't want to go fancy and put all of these icons, at least keep photographs of what you want your birth plan to be. So it's that makes it easier during labor when the nurses or OBs, when they're changing their shift and they're coming in, every time they look at it, you want that birth plan to be so memorable that it sticks in their mind, right? So everything that's on there, it should be easy for them to remember. And this, I really truly like experienced it, with my son, with my first birth. I went into labor like, oh yeah, whatever, like birth plan, yeah, it's something that, yeah, I don't really think it's gonna work, but anyway, my everybody is hyping up about it. I'm just gonna go with it. I thought it's only something that works in those Western countries. It's not gonna work here. Come on, like I really didn't believe in it. But you'll be surprised to know that during labor, so I was laboring, I think, at night. So there was like the night shift and then the morning shift, right? So I checked into the labor room around 1 or 2 a.m. or something like that. And then my son was born around 9 or 10 a.m. So there was the change of shifts. But you'll be so surprised to know that every midwife who came after the shift, they remembered what my preferences were for labor. So they kept saying, "Oh, when the OB would come and they would say, why is she not being monitored?" And they would say, "Oh, it was in her birth plan. She prefers not to have the continuous monitoring." Those who've already given birth would know the continuous monitoring that goes on your belly when it makes it really difficult for you to like walk around or move around. And when you're going through those contractions, it can be such a distraction for some, not for all, but each mom has her own preference. So you can study up on it and choose what it is. But the point is that instead of writing it down just as a text, if you have at least a picture, at least a picture, and that makes it let's say easier for them to remember, then it's not their responsibility, right? It's your responsibility to make sure that your birth and your labor goes the way that you prefer for it to go, right? So you want it to be as easy as possible for anyone who's coming in your labor room to remember what's on your birth plan, so they respect it, right? And the reason why we insist on doing this beforehand is because that day when you're in labor, all of these tiny tiny things can really throw you off, right? So when you're really focusing on a contraction and you're at the peak of a contraction, someone comes in and asks, "Oh, what was your this, what was that, oh, did you want this?" And you're like, "Oh my god, like this is really not the time to be doing this." So which is why it's very important to do those preparations beforehand and have this birth preferences or a birth plan, and discuss it with your husband, your mother, and all of those who are around you, so that they also make sure that this is being respected. And more importantly, whoever's coming into the labor room with you, if you have a doula, then it's you're all taken care of. But if it's going to be someone else, then they will also be having the information and knowledge to be an advocate for you, right? So see, when we talk about all this, it can feel as if like, I mean, am I going into battle or something? Why do I need an advocate? But truly, to be honest, in the hospital setting that we have now, yeah, I mean, you may have experienced this from, if we're all from India, right? So we know that back home in India, I mean, there are so many mothers who end up having emergency cesarean sections because of things that, when you really hear the story, and when the mom says she feels like she was violated, right? Like her body was taken advantage of, and there was really no reason for her to have that C-section, right? And C-sections are like major abdominal surgeries, right? So it takes so much to recover from a C-section, right? So the reason, when we say, we need to prepare this, someone needs to be your advocate, the reason we're doing all of this is to make sure that you are able to have as positive, calm, natural, happy birth experience as possible, based on what you prefer. So even if that is, you prefer to have an epidural, after reading about everything, what an epidural is, and what are the advantages, what are the risks involved, if you really feel that you need an epidural, you need to put that on your birth plan, right? Because how else would they know? That time when you're in labor, that's not the time for you to be talking to them and explaining what you want and all of that, right? So I hope I'm able to convey like the really the importance of having a birth plan, and also choosing a hospital that will respect your birth plan. Where I gave birth, alhamdulillah, like they were really respectful of the birth plan. And funny enough, afterwards, when I was, in the recovery room, the doctor told me, "Oh my God, you're Indian. I thought you were some American, because they told me that she has a birth plan." And I know, wow, like, it's only the Western moms who come in with a birth plan. But she was mentioning like that. But I would say, I mean, why is it only Western moms? Don't moms from India deserve to have a good birth experience? This is also after birth, what you would like. It's also something that needs to be on the birth plan, because the time after birth, everyone is so excited. Oh my God, the baby is here. Everyone's coming. Everyone wants to see the baby and all of that. You're still in the labor room, so it's not the visitors. However, the doctors, nurses, people can be coming in and say, "Oh my God, let's clamp the cord. Let's take the baby. We need to wash the baby. We need to check the baby's weight. We need to check you. Do this, do that." No, like no. So if you need to mention it on the birth plan, so that they know that immediately after baby is born, I want to hold the baby. I want to hold him or her skin to skin. I don't want the baby to be weighed, or check this or check that. This was something that, even though it was on my birth plan, I wasn't careful to, let's say, elaborate on it. I should have also mentioned that I want to start breastfeeding in that first hour. This is something that I corrected. So this birth plan that we're looking at now, it was what I used for my son, but for my daughter, it was corrected, and I actually insisted that I want to start breastfeeding in that hour. So please, please, don't take the baby away from me. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how much this whole system. It's this whole thing. Labor ward, labor room. It's a system, right? So you are a number on a bed, right? It's it's hard to say, but that's the reality, right? So imagine the labor ward has around 10 labor rooms. You are one of them, and they want to make sure that they finish up with you so that you can be moved out. And that's what their priority is in many hospitals, right? So it's up to you to advocate for yourself, or it's up to your husband or whoever comes with you, or your doula, whoever it is, to advocate for you and make sure that you're able to feed in that time. You're able to, hold your baby in that time after your baby is born. And I mean, nobody's gonna, pamper you or take care of you in that way, unless you mention it and you ask for it. That's just how it is. Here, in afterbirth, another interesting thing to add, that we can add, would be that we want the dad to clamp the cord, along with dad skin to skin, and even the Islamic birth rituals, which we have. We have the adhan, the dates, and the zamzam, and all of those rituals. Uh, we can also add that, we want the dad to clamp the cord. If we mention it there, what they will do is, they will invite, once the cord stops pulsating, they will, invite the dad to cut the cord, which is something that I had with both my birds. It was such a special moment, when the dad also gets to be part of the experience. It's not for all men, to be honest. Like, not all men are interested, or even I would say brave enough. However, if you discuss with your partner and if this is something that you want to do as a couple, as new parents, you want the dad to be the one to clamp the cord, it can be something special, right? And even if you want someone to click pictures of that, of the dad cutting the cord and all of those are things that can be mentioned on your birth preferences, and it will be respected, inshallah. The birth plan is a place where we can share those preferences beforehand, so that once the baby is there, everything's going to go so quickly, right? So maybe you don't have the time to say, oh my god, stop, wait, we were supposed to give him this and give him that. No, right? So it's all there, and you can just sit back and just enjoy the moment and be there in that, immersed in that experience. So that's the whole point. Let's get into how we can choose what should go on your birth plan, and how we can make it. So we've discussed the purpose and why and how and everything. So essentially, when you're going to write your birth plan or write down your birth wishes, it's for the first step that you will take is actually have a vision or have a dream and set that for your labor and your birth, right? So it's yours, right? It's your day. It's the day that you are going to be receiving your baby into this world, right? So first of all, you need to decide what you want that day or that time to look like. So for me, it was, I wanted my birth to be a very calm spiritual experience with my husband there, right? This is what the vision that I wanted was. That's how I started. So it can be different for each mom, and even if you have any health risks or anything involved in your pregnancy, all of that can be taken into consideration, right? So first you need to decide what you want. So to help you decide what you want or what should be there, you need to do some research, right? Of course. So we are not all medical professionals. We don't know what all is going to be involved, or what are these medical terms. What is a cervical exam? What is monitoring? What are the pushing positions? We don't know all of this, right? So the first step is to, after you decide what your vision is to start doing your research, right? Start doing your research. For example, this let's say layout that I've given here, which I used, I've divided it. This is, there are many templates out there. So you can just Google, like, birth plan templates and choose one that works. But this is the one that worked for me, and it has worked for many other moms. So first, you mentioned something about your labor environment. What you want to happen, how do you want that room to be, right? So do you want, some hospitals even have medical students come and attend the labor. They're trying to teach them what happens during labor. This mostly happens in India. But see, we are the ones, let's say, going through labor, right? So if we don't want someone to be there, who we don't want to be there, we can mention it here, right? For example, I don't want any medical students attending my birth, something like that, right? So all of this would come in a labor environment, right? So you can mention things such as, I want the lights to be dim, please speak softly. And you'll be surprised, actually, like, all of these, if they respect that, it actually works, right? So unless you mention it, they won't know, right? So I mentioned here Quran recitation, and because of that, my midwife actually asked me, asked my husband, do you have a speaker or something to play your religious audio, because that's being mentioned here. So all of those, positive words and encouragement, all of these are things that, when it comes down to it, it's your choice as a mom, right? You should know what should go there. um, I, like, personally, I had a childbirth educator. Like, I went for the childbirth education classes. So from there, whatever we learned, based on that, I wrote down what I thought was my preferences, and I shared it to the instructor, and she's the one who approved this, and we started with it. But it'll be different for each mom. That's the point, right? So some of us like to be immersed in the water. Some of us like massages. Some of us want the candles to be there. Whatever that is. So all of this are things that we can include in our birth plan, inshallah. So that's, so quickly, just to go over the sections, because we've already been speaking for more than half an hour. So one of the first things, let's say in detail, if we're talking about it, one of the first things that we will try to include is the form of pain management that we want. So I haven't mentioned it as pain management as a title, because in the hypnobirthing, let's say, courses that you take, they tell us don't look at it as pain, right? So it's not labor pain, it's just surges or waves. So which is why I did not mention the word pain. And it's also something that you can mention in your birth plan, right? Don't ask me, how is the pain? Instead of that, instead of asking how is the pain, and keeping on telling the word pain, 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 it's a negative word, right? So instead of that, you can mention on your birth plan, don't ask me, pain. Instead of that, you can ask, how comfortable are you? Right? So that's also another way to ask, can you tolerate the pain? So anyway, so these are all things. So which is why I did not mention as such pain management, but the section that says during labor, I would like, that's essentially also talking about, pain management. So it's up to you. Do you want an epidural? Are you okay with getting an epidural? Or sometimes even, you can mention that don't ask me or don't offer me pain management unless I ask for it, right? So all of those are things that you can mention, right? If you want to labor as naturally as possible, or you want to, you prefer something like laughing gas instead of epidural. So all of these are things that you can mention about pain management. And the next part that you need to make sure that is there is, how would you like to labor, right? So this is, see, before writing the birth plan, it's essential that we figure out what we want, right? So we either do the research or sign up for any of the childbirth classes. With There are many curriculums out there, right? So there's Bradley, there's Amani Birth for Muslim moms, there's Lamaze, there's Donna. There are so many different trainings or childbirth curriculums. There's hypnobirthing, water birthing, gentle birthing, so many different, right? So you can do your research and pick any, right? Pick any system or that you would like to follow, and understand what's going to happen during labor and decide what you want. So all of this research that you've done before that, the birth plan is the time to apply that. So okay, the first is our labor environment, the second is pain management, third is how would you like to labor. So this is essentially your preferences for labor. So this can be things like, you want, let's say, your husband to give you a massage. There are massages on your specific massage points on your back. So these are things that if you take a let's say birth education class, they will coach you and your husband on how to go through it. So if you have any essential oils that you're using, or any specific hot water bags, or even a birthing ball, the exercise ball, if you want to use that, or if you want to use like a water tub, this is how you want your labor to be. So that's the second one. So first is the labor environment, second is pain management, third is how would you like to labor. So how would you like those laboring stages to be. And the fourth will be the medical interventions, right? So this birth plan is a place where you can clarify whether are you a mom who would like to be offered medical interventions. For example, let's say the cervical exams, or the IV, or monitoring, or any of those interventions, epidurals, or the inductions, or any of those interventions. If you're someone who would prefer that or not, that's something that you need to clarify over there. Another point to elaborate would be specifically for the stage where you're pushing. So this is the point that I've mentioned here, which says during birth, right? So during birth, I would like to try alternative birth positions. So what that means is, sometimes in the hospital setting, when they see that you're starting to transition and you're about to push, they will say, "Oh my God, lie down on the bed. We need to see the baby's head. If it's coming, we need to see." So actually, the research supports. This will also depend on which childbirth view that you follow, but research supports that when you're obviously lying down on your back, you're going against gravity, right? So it makes it harder or more difficult for you to push your baby out, or for your baby to come out, right? So, which is why we try to practice different other birth positions rather than lying down. Emphasize as a separate section during birth, what would you like? So alternative birth position, that means that you don't ask me to just lie down and just lie on the bed, right? So whatever feels natural for you. For me, for both my births, I was, let's say, upright, so standing up, so I couldn't even be on, like, hands and knees. So each mother will have a different experience during labor. So the point is that whatever you feel comfortable with at that point should be respected. That's the whole idea. So if they keep telling you, lie down, sit down, do this, it's gonna throw you off. You're gonna feel, let's say, annoyed, because labor is, it's very intense. you'll be surprised, but those who've already given birth would know. During labor, like if the slightest annoyance comes, you just want to scream and shout. So at that point, you want to be left alone to be in any position that you feel comfortable. If that's on, sitting on an exercise ball, or if it's like sitting down on the ground or standing up, or as you can see the position that I've given here in the icon, it says on hands and knees. Whatever position it is should be respected. Of course, it's each mother's preference. If you prefer that your hospital team, let's say, takes the control and says, okay, you want to be guided through your pushing, those are the scientific research that you will do before you write the birth plan, of course. So here in today's session, I'm just sharing the different ways that you can do it and how I've used it in my own experience. But the details of each section, or what each section is and what should be included, it's up to you. It's what you prefer, basically, right? So uh, and another thing that I've mentioned here in this section, particularly about the end of labor when you're pushing, is no time limits, right? So there should be no time limit. You should not be given, oh my god, like, you've been pushing for 5-10 minutes or like half an hour. Imagine, right? So imagine you're like doing the biggest, most important task of your life, and someone comes and discourages you in that way. Like, how would you end up feeling, right? So but the point is, it's helpful to emphasize what you want for that pushing stage also, right? During labor, and then a separate section for the pushing stage, what you want. And then, as you asked as well, after birth, what would you like? So this is also another section that should be included. Now, other than all of these sections, you should also include who your support team is going to be. If that's your husband, or if it's your mother or your doula or whoever that is, you should include that. And another section that should be included is a section on informed consent. This is like super important, which is why I kept it like on top. Informed consent means please explain fully before any medical intervention. By the way, feel free to copy this sentence, because it's so important. And sometimes it's just not respected, right? They just come in, you'll be surprised, they just come in and just say, oh my god, lie down, we need to check how many centimeters you are, or lie down, we need to give you this medicine or this injection, or you don't even know what's being put into you. That's how far how much the system takes control, right? So we want to make sure that whatever is being done, it's not like you're going to refuse or agree. It's like, at least tell me what's being done, right? Explain fully to me or my husband what's being done, and allow us at least 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to make a decision when it's possible, unless it's an emergency. Another sentence that my doula had suggested that we mention, and I hadn't mentioned it here, is that as long as the baby and the mother is not at risk, I would like to proceed as naturally as possible. So this is also something that you can include. It's up to you how you write your birth plan or what is included. The point is that at least have it, right? Do it, have it, do the research, and have that idea of what you want and how it's going to be during labor. And train yourself to have the confidence to advocate for yourself, for your baby as well, right? For your baby as well. And make sure that this, whatever is your birth plan, that your husband also knows, so that he is also aware your wishes are respected. This, what you can see here, the pink one, the pink birth plan, this was actually a birth plan that I did for Nisreen, who came last week, our guest. This was for one of her clients. So she was a doula for that, and this was a birth plan that was used for that. So these, as Nisreen is also a lactation consultant, this is she went into very much detail about that. Give chance to breastfeed as soon as possible. Avoid the teat or the bottle, the pacifier, the bottle. Avoid formula milk unless there's a medical need. Sometimes you'll be surprised, they just start feeding your baby formula without even asking you. So instead of using a bottle, if there's a need to give artificial milk, and or if it's your own milk that you've expressed during pregnancy, you can make sure that you can mention here that you want that milk to be given using a syringe or a spoon or a cup. If the artificial bottle that it is what the baby first gets used to, imagine when you try to breastfeed, it's going to cause the nipple confusion. So all of those are things that either your childbirth educator or your doula can assist you in preparing these sections, or you can just do the research on your own. There are so many resources available out there, many courses, many websites that you can use. This is a website that my doula had suggested to me. This is called evidence-based birth. So this is a website where you will find the scientific research and the scientific articles for each intervention or each term that comes during labor. So you can just go on this website and search for whatever you want to search for. Like for example, if it's an induction, you can write, evidence on use of induction, or evidence on use of episiotomy, evidence on use of, whatever that is. So this is a website which has the scientific research and articles, and then you can read through it and see, like, okay, is the risk involved that much, or is it something that I would like to have or not, right? So the website is called Evidence Based Birth. So it's just evidencebasedbirth.com. You can use it. Ultimately, you can also, refer to your childbirth educator or doula, and the advantage of that is that they'll also coach you into having the confidence, to advocate for yourself using the birth plan. It's a like, vast topic, and I've had two births, so there's so much I could, talk about this forever.